Hey guys, this is HotNoob here, and this is PHP tutorial number 9. In this tutorial we're going to be going over MySQL and PHP's extension MySQLi. MySQLi stands for MySQL Improved and not MySQL Injections, just so you guys know. Moving on, first of all we're going to start by creating a user and database, and we're going to be using a tool here called PHP MyAdmin. If you don't already have it installed, you should do so. And it's not that hard to install, so I'm not going to be going over a tutorial of it. So I'm going to start off by adding a new user, and I'm going to call this user T9, which stands for tutorial 9. I'm going to set the host to a local host, which basically denies remote access to it, so only the machine that the server is on, or that the MySQL server is on, can access it. And that's a pretty good feature there, security feature. Okay, so I've generated a password here, and I'm just going to save it in this file, temporarily. And I'm going to create a database with the same name and grant all privileges. And then for global privileges, I'm going to select grant so it can connect to the database. Okay, add user. And then I'm going to go to T9 here. So this is the T9 database, and as you can see, it's pretty empty. I'm going to go over to privileges and then edit privileges for the database specific and whatnot. And normally what you'd do is you'd uncheck all of these, but just because I'm lazy and don't have a lot of time, I'm not going to change anything. But normally you'd want to keep select, insert, update, and sometimes maybe deletes, but delete can cause some extra vulnerabilities. Anyways, yeah, it doesn't really make too much difference, because once someone has access to SQL, they can inject PHP code and do all sorts of crazy things. So yeah, anyways, continuing on, let's create a table here. And I'm going to call this users, just so you guys have some sort of somewhat practical example. Username, varchar, I'm going to give this a length of 32, same with the password. And just in case you guys don't know, MD5 hashes are also 32 characters long. That's another reason why I keep it with 32 characters, and it looks pretty. So I'm going to save that. Whoops, I forgot one little thing in the structure. So for the users, I go to structure here. Should have done this ahead of time. So I'm going to set this to a primary key, change this, and I'm going to add in auto increment, which is a_i. I should have done that when I created the table, but whoops. And then let's go insert some data so we have something to play with. Just going to say my username, my password, and then I'm going to add in another one here called my username 2 and my password 2. Let's go. Okay, now let's get to the PHP portion of this. Okay, so as you can see here, I have 3 files created. The common PHP file is just one full of functions, which I've added in to save time with the video. I might be posting up this code, might not. It's not too hard to make on your own. The next is the config.file, and the reason for having this in a separate file and not index.php, or the file that you're working in, is mainly just for convenience. So you don't have to redefine it all the time. And yeah, I mean, you might want to put it in a sql.php file or whatever, and also have a config file, but I find one big config file is usually the best. And then the reasons for having it in a global variable is so you can delete the values afterwards, right? So if there is a PHP injection in your code somehow, you'll be slightly more protected, but not really that protected. I mean, once there's an injection of really just any sorts, you're pretty much screwed. So yeah, moving on. Try and get as much as I can. So let's start with creating the connection. So say $globals MySQLi, and you don't have to use globals, but this is just for the example because later on I'm going to be bringing in these functions which do require globals. So equals new MySQLi, and then we're going to put in our connection information. I forgot to fill that out, so let's go back here first. Your host is going to be localhost, unless you have a web host or whatever that has an SQL server on a different server, in which case they will tell you and give you a different host to put in, but by default you need to put in localhost, put in the username, which was T9, database is also T9 because of how we set it up, and then put in the password. And notice how everything is in single quotes because all of this information is static. It won't be, you're not putting any dynamic things in. And with earlier versions of PHP MyAdmin, they used more complex passwords in the generator, and they changed that because noobs were using double quotes, and then it would affect, the passwords would be affected with double quotes. So, moving on, I'm just going to get rid of that so we can see. Let's do the connection info. So I'm just going to temporarily copy this over, just so I have some easy references. And let's go to tab. Here we are. And this is just me formatting it. I didn't need that. So I'm just going to make 4 of them, put in the commas. Make sure you don't forget the commas, otherwise you will get syntax error. So here we are. You want to put it in the same order that I've got here. So host, user, pass, and DB. So pass, DB. Okay. And make sure you have a semicolon there. Sometimes you can forget. Okay. And then to check it, we're going to say if, and this would be globals MySQLi, and then connection error no. I always forget this one. Yeah, connect error no. And just in case you need a reference, you can get this by going to Google and Googling for MySQLi, PHP MySQLi. It'll bring you to this page, and then you'd go to Quick Start, and ta-da, you're here. In this version, or tutorial, as I forgot to mention, we're using the object-oriented version, and the reason for that is just flexibility. The procedural method will limit you to 1 connection, but there are some extremely rare cases that you will need more than 1 SQL connection, but it's highly unlikely that you ever will. Okay, and so if it's connected, in this case, if there's an error, so what happens here is if it's connected, it will return 0, and if there's an error, it'll return some other number. So basically we're saying if it's greater than 0, just going to leave it like that. And then having gone over this, I think, you know what, probably have. Just going to do this the shorthand way. Exit failed to connect to MySQLi. The reason for the shorthand is because I don't have a lot of time to do this video, because there is quite a bit to do with MySQL here. Quite a few things to do. So yeah, moving on. Start by creating a query here. So results equals my $globals MySQLi. Well, in this case, because we're in this, we can just do that, but I'm just going to keep with globals. It's just how I keep track of things. Query, and this here is just calling the function from that object because it is an object. Just so you guys know, I haven't gone over classes yet in PHP tutorials. So moving on, select, then I'm going to switch over to here so you guys can sort of see what I'm doing. And rather than putting in a star, which means that it selects everything in a database, I'm going to do it using a slightly more secure method, which is by specifying which columns you want. So username and password, word, from, this query is going to be a bit long, users, which is the table name here. And just in case you guys are complete noobs at MySQL, you can always use PHP MyAdmin to generate some queries, some general queries and stuff like that. as you can see when showing this is what the query is. It always shows you when it executes it, which is a great thing about PHP MyAdmin. Anyways, select from users where I'm going to say ID equals 1, right? And then we're also going to put in a limit. You can do 0, 1 or 1, and the limit is only shorthand with the select query. So don't try it with the update one, I think. Anyways, whatever. I never remember. And finally, with the results, we say if $result. Sorry, it's bad. $user equals $result. Fetch sock, which stands for fetching the associative array. And the reason for using the sock is to make it harder to for MySQL injections and sorry, I got a bit of a cough, but just to make it harder to gather your data structures and stuff like that. Doesn't really do much, but and it also lowers the amount of memory used. So if you do array, what happens is you get both 0, 1, 2, 3, and then you also get the associative array. So this will be using up less memory and less resources. Anyways, else I'm gonna say failed. Sorry, to find user, and then obviously here was a success. It connected, and you got all your information and whatnot. So we're gonna say echo username user. Okay, and the reason for the if statement is because we're only getting one result. Normally you'd probably want to use a while statement, but I'm going to use if for now. Okay, let's load up the results and hope everything works, so I haven't made any mistakes. Oops, array to, whoops, oh wow, okay, new mistake. I forgot to put in the field that we wanted to retrieve, sorry. So $user brackets, and then inside we have the field, and notice it's the same as in the SQL. So there we go. So user equals my username, and let's say we wanted to loop through all of the results, and let's get rid of this limit here, and get rid of this condition altogether. So we got select username and password from users. So okay, then line 25. I'm confused. Oh, okay. One sec. Oh, wow, I'm totally not thinking. Sorry, while statements don't have an else. And then if you wanted to check it, you can put in a boolean or whatever. Boolean is probably easier to figure out. There are other methods, but I think boolean might be the, well, might be the lowest, might not be. So if not passed, we can do this here. Sorry, my mind's a bit fuzzy today. What? Anyways, moving on. Let's move on to these functions that I've made. I'm just going to quickly go over them because I don't have a lot of time here. Mysql Connect is just to make the connection easier, so you don't have to every time and put in all of this code. So you'd replace it when we first require in the commons. Require once common PHP, and it's called common because I put commonly used functions in there. And then we can get rid of all of this junk here and put in Mysql Connect. And I didn't have enough time, well, I didn't bother with putting any error checking in here with the MySQL query function, but that's another thing you can do, is you can check the SQL to make sure that there were no errors in it with the query. And then you can close on errors, so that's also a good hand thing. So I'm just going to change this here to, and that way you get the benefits of procedural without having to use procedural. and so it allows it to be more flexible. And then you can always put in some overloads and whatnot. I know it might not seem that useful to you, but it will in the end, later on. Okay then, yeah, I hope I got in most of it. So I got the basics and whatnot. So yeah, this is HotNoob here, and you guys can come check out my blog at hotnoob.com. And I'll see you guys later.